Today we are talking about drawing in Game Lab. So for your warm-up, I want you to answer this in your journal, and you'll make a copy of the journal in the Unit 5 folder, and that is right here. Okay, so you'll make a copy of this. Whenever you click on it, you'll make a copy of it by clicking this link, and then you'll share the link with me and then also submit it here. And then I will grade that at the end of Unit 5. And let me show you what it looks like. Okay, and I did talk about this in a previous video. And so I'm glad that some people have already been able to do that. So these are supposed to be links, but okay, so that doesn't work. But let me show you what it's looking like. Okay, so this was lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. So lesson 3 is in here. So this is your warm-up journal, okay? But then lesson 4, I didn't get all the way through that one, so what you'll maybe want to do is type the prompt, like pause it, type the prompt, and then type your answer. And then for the wrap-up journal, same thing, and then for the question of the day, the same thing. So I'm giving you a little bit more work, but I'm also giving you exactly what it is that you need to type, okay? And this will take you all the way through lesson 17, which is where we're going to stop. That's halfway through this unit on code.org. We won't have enough time to get to the making of the game part, but we will get to the interactive card project. And, if you have time, in your free time, you'll still have access to this after the course. You'll have access to the code.org stuff, I think, and it's free even if you don't have access. And so you can always go in and you can look at those courses. And if making the game is something that you're interested in and it's something that you want to do, I'm sure that you will find a way to do it. So this is your journal, and it's already typed in there for you for this specific lesson. Based on what you know about computers, what do you think will be different between telling a person about your image and telling a computer about your image? I'm going to give you a minute to swap over to your journal so that you can answer this question. So what's interesting is the way we communicate with each other as people may be more informal than how we communicate with a computer. For example, communicating with a digital assistant requires precise language and commands, usually starting with "hey," and then the name of the device. Similarly, as we start coding in this unit, you will need to use a precise set of commands to communicate with a computer. So whenever I tell Alexa in the morning to turn off the lights in Bailey's room, if I say this from my phone, I have to be very specific. The lights in Bailey's room, not just the lights. Whenever I'm speaking to the Echo Dot that's in her room, I can say, turn off the lights. But whenever I'm on my phone and I can see there are other devices, then I have to be even more specific. So in order to give instructions to a computer, we need to use a language that a computer understands. To make our animations and games, we will use a version of JavaScript that uses blocks. The environment that we will be programming in is called GameLab. Our question of the day that you will answer at the end of this lesson: how can we communicate to a computer how to draw shapes on the screen? And that's exactly what we're going to learn how to do. And that's why you'll be able to answer it at the end of the lesson. So it's easier if you have somebody to kind of be a sounding board for or two, because sometimes I find that students know the answers. They just don't realize they know the answers. Or my method in the classroom is whenever you have a question, I try to ask a question in return that will help guide you to the answer, because I know that you're capable. And so what we're going to do first, though, let's look at Code Studio Level 1. Look at the line of code in the workspace and discuss it with your partner where you think the shape will be drawn on the grid. Click to run the program and see what happens. Change the numbers inside the block, then try running the program again. Try to place the rectangle near the bottom right of the screen. So if I click run, now remember, explore GameLab. We are exploring on this level, okay? These are the instructions. This is the same instructions that is right here, okay? Those are the same instructions that are right here. So look at the line of code. This is the line of code. Now let me tell you this. These are blocks, okay? These are the blocks. You click and drag. This is harder to do on an iPad, okay? If you have a Bluetooth mouse that you can use on your iPad, it will be a lot easier. If you are already familiar with programming in general, you can click Show Text. Do you see what happens? Literally, all it does is remove the block. Okay, this is the exact same thing. It's just that the block gives you more of a visual for seeing how programs and lines of code connect to each other. So whenever I first started programming, the blocks made so much sense. Actually, I took a programming class. It was a summer class at Ole Miss for their summer school things. And it was whenever I was maybe in the 9th or 10th grade. And I did not understand any of it. It was really a miracle that I got even a C in that class, because I just understood nothing. Fast forward to my first year of teaching, and I'm doing the hour of code on code.org, and it's using blocks. And it makes complete sense. So it's okay if you don't understand at first. Over time, it will help you to understand. So at this point now of me programming for almost 10 years, even just through code.org, I prefer using text. It's easier to just go with it, but I will keep it in blocks. And if I need to change it to text to work something out in my head, then I will. And you don't have to worry about that. You can choose whatever you want. Also on a computer versus on the iPad, if you hover over the block, it will give you this examples option. And it will kind of, this is what you get when you look at examples. You get some GameLab documentation. Now, I have not found a way to access that on the iPad. So that's another problem with that. Okay. Show grid button. It shows you a grid. And these are things that we're going to get to when later in the lesson. The grid starts at 0, 0 up at the top left. Each block is 50. So it goes up to 400 on the x-axis and 400 on the y-axis. So if the top left is 0, 0, the bottom right is 400, 400. Okay, so they say discuss with your partner where you think the shape will be drawn on the grid. If you can't see the grid, You can't discuss where it's going to go on the grid, right? So if we're saying X, comma, Y, this is the X position, this is the Y position. So if I were to find, okay, this right here, X and Y. Now, this is another thing that's different on the iPad. You can't just hover. You can tap on the grid and it will show you a number somewhere around that grid. It will show you the coordinates, but you can't just hover like you can with a mouse. So I usually prefer doing these activities on a computer or at least with a Bluetooth mouse. So if you have those kinds of problems, it's possible that you could come into my room while you're working on these and use one of the computers. I have plenty of availability first and second and possibly third block. Fourth block is full though, and if you were doing this during fourth block, you would probably be in my physical class, which is happening fourth block. So that would also might work out though, because then you could just get a live lesson. Okay, so we're gonna click run, see where it is. That's correct. Now, one thing that I also want you to notice that should have been made clear in lesson 2 is that the square, the top left corner, that's where we're gonna place things on this grid, okay? For circles, it's placed based on the middle position of the circle. For a square, it is the top left corner. All right, change the numbers inside the block, then try running the program again. Try to place the rectangle near the bottom right of the screen. What X and Y position do you think you would need to put in here in order to get it towards the bottom right? This is a possibility. This is a possibility. I mean, the X and the Y don't have to be the same. It just has to be closer. Both of them have to be closer to the number 400. Okay, if 100 puts it in the top left, increasing towards 400 moves you to the right and to the bottom, then your X and your Y need to be closer to 400. Now, if you were to use 400, where did it go? Well, remember, if this is 400 at this very bottom corner and it puts the top left square, top left of the corner at that, so our square is actually down here now. It's off the grid. We can't see it. So let's just change those numbers. So some people might say, oh no, it didn't work. It did. It worked. It just went off the grid. All right, so decreasing that both of those values by 50 moved it right up here to the 350, and we're good to go. So we're going to watch this video, and as you're watching it, I want you to think about these questions. Where can you find more information about how to use the blocks, and what's an advantage to using block mode?
I'm Amara. I'm a student at Dartmouth College, and I love to code and dance. People always thought I was good with technical stuff with computers and phones, and then I did Girls Who Code. And yeah, seeing other girls interested and realizing that it was more accessible than I think I thought was a good gateway into computer science. Welcome to Game Lab. Game Lab is a tool that lets you draw pictures, design animations, and build your own games with code. To create these animations and games, you'll be learning and using the programming language JavaScript. GameLab is designed with the beginning programmer in mind, but it also includes many powerful features to help you bring your creations to life. Let's get started. In GameLab, you can add lines of code to your program by dragging blocks out from the toolbox and snapping them together. Then click the Run button to see the result. The output of the program will show up on the left in the display area. If you prefer, you can also type the commands yourself. Either way you write your code, you can always flip between block mode and text mode. In fact, you can work in text mode and drag blocks out to insert the text. If you make an error, You can use the blocks as a way to check if it's the right command. If you want to get rid of a line of code, just drag the block off the screen. You can also delete it from the text. To start out, you'll be drawing with simple shapes like rectangles and ellipses. That's a fancy name for an oval. To change where shapes show up on the screen, you can change the numbers given to each command. The first two numbers set the position of the shape. The last two numbers change the size.
Okay, that part is really important, okay? In our first exercise on level 1, all we had was the position. And in following levels, we're also going to be dealing with the size. Okay, so you have the option for X, Y, width, and height.
Let's check out an example where we want to move our rectangle down the screen and then make it wider. In GameLab, the X and Y position starts at the top left corner. If we want to move the rectangle down the screen, we actually need to increase the Y value. To make the rectangle wider, we'll also need to increase its width. Learning how to use new commands doesn't have to be trial and error. If you hover over any of the blocks, you can read more about how to use it and see detailed examples of each command. I don't know what I want to do after college, but I know that computer science will give me a lot of opportunities to work in many different industries, which is why I like it so much.
Level 3. Let's go to level 3. So on level 3, it wants you to place two rectangles exactly in the corners of the screen, just like in the picture. And if you go to code.org, all right, it gives you the picture right here. Okay, you can hit run, hit show grid, hit run to see what you're starting with. Okay, and then change the position of the rectangles. Again, we kind of talked about this on level 1. If the top left corner is placed, it shows you 0, 0. So if we change this to 0 for X and 0 for Y, and then hit reset and run again, it's going to tell us. So if we wanted to do our other one, we would enter the same coordinates that we used on level 1. Okay, 350 and 350. Reset, run it again, and then that's what we have. Pause the video here if you need to do level 3 for the practice, okay? And then we're going to watch this video about how to add colors. What is the difference between fill and stroke? That's what I want you to think about while you're watching this video.
So far, you've only been drawing gray-colored shapes. Let's throw some color into these shapes to make them more interesting. Every shape has two elements that can be colored: a stroke and a fill. The stroke is the border of the shape. The fill is the color inside the shape. At any point, you can change the color used to draw the stroke or fill of the shape. For example, here we'll change the fill to be the color green before drawing a rectangle. If you draw more rectangles after setting the fill color, they'll also be green. Until you change the fill color, GameLab will continue to draw shapes in the color that you set. The same applies for the stroke of your shapes. If you don't want your shapes to have a stroke or a fill, you can use the no stroke or no fill commands to make it so. The order of commands matters a lot in GameLab. You need to change the color of your stroke or fill before you draw the shape. If you were drawing or painting in real life, this would be like dipping your paintbrush into your palette before drawing on the canvas.
Okay, so one thing that I really want to emphasize is the importance of the order. Okay, so the analogy that she uses, if I am going to paint a blue sky with a yellow sun, and I say, fill with yellow, and then I choose a circle, and I put that on my canvas, I cannot go back and put a blue rectangle underneath the yellow. So whatever, you have to think about it in layers. Whatever needs to go down first, which would be the blue sky, that needs to be towards the top of the list. Okay, so fill blue, this rectangle, so that I have a blue sky. And then I would say fill yellow, the circle, at whatever position, so that way I have a sun. Okay, that's very important.
There's lots of other commands you can use to create interesting and complex drawings. As you get more familiar with all the drawing tools available in Game Lab, you'll get better at bringing your ideas to life. Happy drawing!
All right, so we're gonna do levels 5 through 7. If you get stuck, well, first follow the instructions, but if you get stuck, use the Help and Tips tab and then the code documentation. The code documentation, you can see the examples. Let's see, if I go to code documentation, how can I access this otherwise? I'm sure there's a way. Yeah, here's the way. Okay. So this is the link that you can use to go to Game Lab documentation, studio.code.org/docs/IDE/gamelab/expressions/fill. And then you can see all of the other different ones, and that's how you can access all of the documentation, even though you can't click on it from within Game Lab. Okay, so let's look at this level 5 together, and then I'm going to let you work on your own, okay? You can also make your rectangles different colors with fill. It will set the color for every shape that comes after it in the code. Look at this. Do this. Look at the code that sets the color. Show me where. Here is the code that sets the color. Fill blue. Change the color from blue to yellow. This is hard to do on the iPad, but you can always just select and then just type yellow. All right. Add a new square by dragging a rectangle block into the code area below the fill command. I definitely just read that wrong. Okay, so I'm going to move it to below. And now I'm going to reset. Now, can you change the coordinates so that it says the square can go anywhere on the screen, but can you get it to look like the picture? So it's currently at 200, 200, which is going to be in the middle of my grid. So this would be along the x-axis, and I'm moving down 100. So let's try 100, 200. And now it looks just like it does there. All right, so I'm going to let you do the rest of these on level 8. I want you to do all 3. Okay, on level 8, do all 3 for practice reasons, okay? Level 9 is an assessment, and you can click the rubric icon, the rubric word, to see how you're going to be graded on that assessment. All right, so when I click rubric, your key concept is to use a coordinate system, hence the grid, to place elements on a screen, accounting for object size and overlay. All right, if you get your shapes to look like these, all right, you will receive extensive evidence. That's a 4 on the scale for a rubric, okay? If the drawing is mostly the same, but there may be some slight positioning errors and there may be extra lines of code, then you'll get a 3. If the square has moved, is purple, and appears in front of the circles, but does not look like the original picture, you'll get a 2. All right. the picture is either the same, and by the same, this is what I mean. All right, if this is what your picture looks like for this assessment level, you will get a 1 because whatever changes you made appear to be unrelated if this is what your picture looks like when you are done with level 9, okay? So level 10, you can choose just one of these. Unless you really want to challenge yourself and see how you can grow, then I would recommend all 4. Drawing a ladybug, that could be actually very beneficial if you're wanting to think ahead about your interactive card. Choose an image that you are proud of and share it with, I'm going to put a discussion post in our Unit 5 folder, and you can share your Lesson 3 image that you are proud of with the rest of your class, and we can support you. So for your final journal, today you learned how to draw in GameLab for the first time. What type of advice would you share with a friend who is going to learn about drawing in GameLab to make it easier for them? Write this in your journal, and then also answer the question of the day. How can we communicate to a computer how to draw shapes on the screen? If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me, and I look forward to seeing your creations.